Hi everyone, Nate here. Just a quick heads up that if you enjoy What a Hell of a Way to Die, you can access bonus content in which we publish a new episode every week on our Patreon. The link is in the show notes, and for $5 a month, you get access to all the bonus content we've put out since we started the show back in 2016. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me and it's Nate's. Nate, how are things on Racism Island going?
Oh God, dude, you don't even want to fucking begin. The equalities minister basically gave a speech saying that teaching critical race theory and teaching about white privilege is illegal. Like, it's the stupidest country on the planet. Like, nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. Nobody actually understands. The people who are talking about this in the media don't know what critical race theory is. It's just a bunch of just complete idiots. This country is Hungary with worse food, just flat out. Hungary at least has weird vampire buildings and like they make hot peppery stuff. Like they've got good ass food. Hungarian food whips ass, even if it's a completely cursed country, you know. And Hungary also has better weather than here because I mean it has all four seasons. This country just has rainy spring and rainy fall. I'm mad online. I'm mad offline. Fuck England. I'm anti-Anglo forever. But other than that, yeah, life goes on. How are you?
Not too bad. We're I'm transitioning from soldier into Girl Scouts now.
Oh
with
yeah,
my daughter.
Hell yeah.
We had our first Girl Scout meeting yesterday. And it's over Zoom. There's like 100 girls involved, but it was in tandem with the botanical garden. So they're planting stuff, and they get like iron-on badges and shit. And I'm like, well, this is right up my fucking alley. And like, there's a whole layout on like how you're supposed to put the uniform together. And I was like, oh, well, that's just gonna speak to my heart in all kinds of different ways. So I was worried about like, you know, getting out of the military. It's like, what do I do with myself? I mean, obviously I have a career. I was a reservist, so, and I want to get out, but you know, you're always gonna miss it. I turned in all my gear yesterday, and while to be fair, I still have way too much fucking gear than one person should. You know, it's one of those kind of step down. So it's nice that girlfriend that Girl Scouts is there to kind of take over that not really like leadership role, but just like some kind of organization to be a part of, to be a cog in. I guess the military has successfully indoctrinated me in being a good little cog in a machine. So, but I'm just going to do that for the Girl Scouts now, I guess.
One of my good friends who doesn't pull punches told me once that I am constantly joining organizations and then being disappointed when I can't change them. He's like, you did that with high school sports, you did that with all sorts of organizations, you joined a fraternity in college and then you joined the army. And so I've made it a point since I left to try to avoid that, but obviously it's a lot easier now that I don't have to work in a job in a horrible corporation that also sucks. You know, I remember when I first got out of the army, I was back at my parents' place because I was on terminal leave, and I knew I was going to travel a bunch and I was going to, you know, spend time back in Korea. But I went to my parents' place in Indiana because, as I understand it, they had to basically send you somewhere, and you could either get out at your home station or you could get out at your home of record. But when you're stationed overseas, there's a lot more paperwork involved with you getting out at your home station. So I was just like, yeah, fuck it, fine, I don't care. Fly me to Indiana, like that's fine. So I went and stayed with my parents for a little while, and I remember. Do you remember when Benny Johnson did his like weird BuzzFeed before he got fired for plagiarism and became even more of like an alt-right troll? He went to Fort Hood and he was like doing his Fort Hood safari. And I don't think it was because of the Fort Hood shooting, because that was a while before. I think it was either there had been some other incident on Fort Hood or it was the trial of the shooter or something. But anyway, Benny Johnson was there. And he was like, wow, the military has its own grocery stores. The military has its own gas stations. There are normal restaurants on military. Wow, there's a Taco Bell. Like, it was hilarious. And I remember photoshopping, you know, some kind of cool Green Beret exploding comic book from the 70s or 80s, you know, of like badass shit in comic art exploding on the cover and people shooting machine guns, and just photoshopped it to say like, you know, like BuzzFeed Benny presents Tales from Fort Hood. They have Starbucks. And I was so proud of myself for getting like 30 retweets. And I was like, oh, that would be awesome if I could do this. Too bad I don't make any money doing it. And apparently I spoke into the universe. And now this is basically what I do all day. And I do actually make enough money to pay rent on it. So, Baruch Hashem.
The entirety of this podcast is based around my wife one day, like, being irritated that I was constantly on Twitter, and was just like, look, I don't care if you're on Twitter all the time if you're somehow find a way to make money doing it. And I was like, maybe I could do a podcast, I guess. And here we are, fucking nearly 4 years later.
Nearly 4 years later, I was going to say, it's pretty soon. It'll come up on the anniversary of you starting the show, which, I mean, I'm just going to say, fucking Chad moved to be like, I'm going to start a podcast. I don't need a co-host. I'm just going to fucking tell stories. I don't care. That actually ruled really hard. You're like, I don't really know how to do this. Fuck it. Well, upload some shit. I mean, most people get in their feelings and anxieties about it, but not Francis, apparently.
That's how I was also, like, drinking way more back then. So I had the ability to just slam some beers and just be like, all right, fuck it, let's do this.
Yeah.
So I don't know who that person was either, just to say I'm gonna try this out and see how I like it. And I mean, the podcast has gone through many iterations in that first year, and we had Adrian, and we had another producer, and now it's just the two of us, and that's okay. I think
Now it's just
a groove.
Now it's just dudes rock.
All day. This is like Frog and Toad, except without all the homosexual undertones. Actually, no, there's probably a lot of homosexual undertones.
There's plenty of those. Come on, don't sell us short. And then certainly don't sell our Discord community short, okay? That's what they signed up for. That's what they want to hear more of.
We do literally have a Catgirl channel that is
I don't
very
give a
active.
fuck. I'm happy. I'm very, like, that. The Discord community is thriving, and I don't understand everything, but that doesn't matter because people understand each other, and it's like that's a cool thing to have happen under the aegis of our Lefty Veteran podcast for some reason.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to have a community where people can feel safe about stuff and talk about whatever they want. And if you want to talk about it, hit up one of the admins and get a channel made for you. If you want to be a part of that, just the being a Patreon of us or Lions Led by Donkeys, either one. It's a group. It's a group effort of insane people from the internet who we all love and cherish. So anyway,
sadly, there's going to be far less content to discuss on those various channels from some of the bigger sort of war reporting things that have been going on in the last, say, 6 to 10 years, because, well, apparently war reporting with regard to America's participation in wars is just kind of going away.
It's certainly like slowing down. And the thing is about, like, so we're going to talk about, like, the New York Times ending at war, a little bit about War on the Rocks ending the Bombshell podcast, maybe a little bit about the Asking Purpose getting bought out too. There's a lot of just changes that are happening with military stuff. And I talked to Peter Lucier about this. He wrote an interesting article about angry veterans, but I think we're going to focus more just on the what do we do about media, and is there anything we have to do about media?
Yeah.
Like, Nate, what were troop surge levels? Like 100,000 troops?
Oh, more than
Iraq?
that. Yeah, in Iraq it got up to about 160,000 in 2007, 2008. In Afghanistan, I think the max was about 140,000.
Yeah.
And so
Afghanistan's like 9,000 people now, 9,000 troops.
Yeah.
It's lower than when I went, when I was there in 2004, it was 12,000, I think.
Yeah, we've really scaled our presence back in Afghanistan, and as I understand it, most of the bases that we built have since been handed over to the Afghan military. There are a few of them that still remain, like Kandahar Airfield, Bagram Airfield, and Camp Eggers, Camp Phoenix, in Kabul. But primarily, yeah, it's all kind of gone away, and I mean that doesn't mean the U.S. isn't still in Afghanistan. Friend of the show, Kevin Frint, was in Afghanistan in 2019 as an enlisted soldier, not in like a special ops vocation, as a garden variety, basic training qualified, AIT qualified MOS, was in Afghanistan. So that's still happening, but to a much lesser degree. And obviously there's a discussion going on with peace talks about potentially what the role of the U.S. is going to be. And I have my kind of cynical belief because, we paid for a lease on Bagram for 100 years. I don't expect us giving up. I don't expect the American neocon mind to give up bases so close to Iran. But who knows? Who knows? And I do think that it's interesting because there hasn't been like an end of the war moment. You might see one in Afghanistan with regard to the Taliban and other parties signing a peace deal if that does happen. But yeah, I mean, I remember At War at the same time as the New York Times doing their like post-recession series, Living with Less or whatever. And so that would have been legitimately when I was in Afghanistan. So, I left Afghanistan more than 10 years ago. So it's interesting to see, where we're at now and what's going to happen. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen arguments pro and con for it that on one hand, it published a lot of veteran writers and people who report on the military. But another point that I saw raised, and I think is a fair one, is that a lot of that is basically centering the American military in whatever conflict reporting is going on. And I think that very obviously kind of narrows the scope in some capacity to just where we're deploying troops to when, for example, how much reporting have you seen recently about, in mainstream media reporting, either print or TV in the U.S. about Armenia and Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh? Because I've seen very little. There's been some, but I've seen very little. And, I don't expect that's going to change unless the U.S., massively gets involved in some capacity. So,
yeah, the same thing with the border clashes with China and India. You have to like really dig up what's going on. And to be fair, like it's with Armenia and Azerbaijan, like if I didn't know Armenian people, I probably wouldn't be paying that much attention to it either, because that's just that's a regional conflict using conventional weapons. And it's not great. I'm not trying to like, just a boring little war, because it's important. All wars are important. Anytime you pick up a gun and are willing to shoot somebody in the face for your beliefs, that's important one way or the other. The reporting on the troops, you say that it's centering, but that's really the only thing that Americans are interested in.
That's true,
they only
yeah.
want to know. They only want to know what's happening to their guys. They want to know why we're there. As soon as it becomes, if we left Afghanistan and Afghanistan collapsed into, went back to being run by warlords, or, chunks of it being broken off and run by the Taliban or Al Qaeda or whoever is going to be, really filling in a lot of the gaps, and especially in the rural areas of Afghanistan outside of the major metropolitan cities, your average American isn't going to give a fuck about that. I'll care. You'll care, because we had a hand in that. Like, we're a part of it. Part of us is still there one way or another. But your average American, especially the ones coming up now, do you think a fucking Zoomer cares about the Afghan war? Do you think like a 24-year-old right now knows anything or gives a fuck about anything?
No, and I mean, I remember in Afghanistan, I remember as a kid reading the news and seeing news stories, because I was always really interested in news photography, like documentary photography. And my parents got a subscription to Time magazine when I was probably about 14. And I remember seeing stories about there was drought and legitimate famine in southern Afghanistan in 1999, 2000 into 2001. And I remember seeing photos of like people burying dead, the dead children who had died, from like stuff like cholera or diarrhea or, malnutrition. And that was the first I had heard. I remember seeing that photo and be like, I've been reading Time magazine every week. This is the first mention I've heard of this being a thing, that there is, this natural disaster happening in a war zone. And the only reason why it was portrayed in any way, why it got prominence, was because you had this particularly evocative photo of, a father burying a 5-year-old boy, and you could very clearly see that it was a child's body. You know what I mean? Like, other than that, if it hadn't been like a photo that people thought would win awards, nobody would have seen it. And I think that's pretty telling about, our basic perspective. And I mean, maybe that's human nature. Maybe that's everybody. I certainly don't think that your average British person gives a fuck about the world any more than your average American. I think one thing about it being American is that we have a tendency to portray ourselves as being either superlatively better or worse than other countries, when it's like, other countries just have fewer resources and a smaller footprint. But I do think that the people, regardless of where you are in the world, are, unless they're affected in some way, tend to be pretty not clued in and not interested. I just think Americans are particularly like shitty about it, like in the sense of being like their attitudes tend to be shitty. even if they're no more ignorant than other people. But I agree with your point previously that unless our boys are affected, the likelihood of your average, Meemaw carrying is pretty low.
Yeah, it comes down to the, evolutionarily, we're only able to give a fuck about 150 people at any given time. So when there's a nameless, faceless clash happening overseas, it's not as it's not as sexy, I guess. In the PAO, in the media term, you want something that's sexy. And I will say though, like, these days, war reporting no longer like relies on an Edward R. Murrow figure or Anderson Cooper to go and get spooked by incoming fire. Everybody's got a phone now, and everybody can find an internet hotspot somewhere. So, I've been finding out about the Azerbaijan, the war in Armenia and Azerbaijan by following a couple of choice accounts that have been vetted, and that other people are like, no, they're uploading videos that are happening currently. These are, if you want to know what's going on, these guys will tell you. And also we have this beautiful, as you were making German jokes yesterday, Twitter has this fantastic translate tweet thing that you can click on, and then I can be a part of the joke, even though I don't speak German. So
yeah, it's gotten a lot better than the Bing Translate for damn sure. I was surprised at how well it was doing.
I honestly, like, it was so well translated. I was like, did Nate plug this into Translate as in English to translate it into German? Because I'm so used to, you just get used to when you read a lot of translated stuff of having to translate the translation.
Yeah, like that Italian blog post that was about the Kandahar giant that was translated by Google or whatever. And it made no sense. Yeah.
Right. It takes a little bit, like, okay, what are they? I understand the words they're saying, but what are they trying to say? So it has that kind of same effect on it.
Well, one thing I was going to say too is that to the New York Times credit, they also made a point of hiring and developing reporters who could report on those countries in English. Basically, like, instead of sending, your sort of Ernie Pyle or like your Yale grad fucking 2010, 2020 Ernie Pyle equivalent, Anderson Cooper, who seems like a pretty decent guy, but is a Vanderbilt. Let's be perfectly honest.
Let's not say who he is. I'm sure Anderson Cooper is very nice. He is a Vanderbilt though, so
yeah, exactly.
Technically, he's
a class enemy. But the thing I would say is that the Times did do this both in Iraq and Afghanistan of hiring and developing reporters who were Iraqi or were Afghan. And some of the reporting that I've seen on Afghanistan via the Times recently, and when I say recently, I mean like in the last year or so, talking about the peace process, talking about some of the attacks that have taken place, talking about troop withdrawals and things along those lines. Those are all written by Afghans. Now, obviously, like, it's still edited for an American newspaper, and so there's a lot of the sort of American viewpoint, put it that way. But I do think that having that is a thing that I suppose you could say is at least a positive byproduct of the way in which these conflicts have been reported. And also, let's be honest, it's also a byproduct of, well, the fact that most news organizations cannot afford or are not allowed to spend the money required to send people over for stuff like this. Most newspapers in America have been bought up by private equity that is asset stripping them. Newspapers can win all the fucking Pulitzers they want. In 10 years, they're going to get bought up by like Dick Nuts Capital, who's just going to sell their computers for scrap. Like,
right.
Fire everybody, cancel their pensions, and that's what's happening with news media in America. Private equity is destroying it. And so you can't, for one, I mean, we can say, oh, isn't it so fucking enlightened that the New York Times isn't sending, Ernie Pyle or like I said, Yale grad Ernie Pyle 2020 equivalent. But the truth is, it's probably cheaper for them to hire Afghans. And
yeah, they're just outsourcing, which, to be fair, if I'm going to hear about Afghanistan, I do want to hear about it from Afghans.
Well, it's certainly nicer to have it be reported by people who are writing this, for an American audience, but also are Afghans, speak the local language, aren't going to rely on interpreters to, make anything make sense to them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I appreciate that someone can talk about the cultural importance of something, and it's not because they read a book from 1980 written by like a French sociologist or some shit, who went to Afghanistan, but rather like they're Afghan. That does help. Don't get me wrong. I think the growth of sort of local talent that you see used in this is also a byproduct of a couple of things. It's that foreign correspondence doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it does to some extent, but it's limited. And if you're not writing for the LA Times or the Washington Post or the New York Times, you're probably not going to go. It's just not going to happen. It used to be the Chicago Tribune also, but the Tribune has been turned into like one of the worst private equity disasters. So that absolutely is not happening. Also, it's not safe. It's not safe. If you're a white reporter from America and you go over to these places, not only is your life at risk, but I mean, I would say more importantly, because you're ultimately a tourist in your own right, you're also putting everybody else at risk, because you being a target means lots of civilians around you are a target. People who talk to you are a target. Your interpreters are targets. Your fixers are targets. So the consequences of America's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have made it such that they basically they couldn't depend on native informants and fucking gumshoe reporters sent abroad, because they wouldn't survive. It would be like a stupid Rudyard Kipling poem fucking writ large in the 21st century that, you spend $200,000 educating this guy at fucking, Yale and SOAS, and then he gets smoked like the first time he fucking steps out of an MRAP. They don't want to take that risk. They don't want to spend that money, I guess. And so instead they use local reporting. But I will say that, I mean, that is a positive thing in a way. And I do respect those writers who are going out and doing that, because they're out putting their lives on the line all the time. And like, I appreciate the fact that like they have been willing to go through that to be in a position to report on their own home countries in a way that, is going to at least provide a more nuanced view for people abroad. Now, of course, does that matter in the long run? Because I mean, the shit's going away because people aren't fucking reading it. Fundamentally, that's the point, right? People aren't reading it. Like, if they were reading it, it would stay. If they were getting page views to sell you Wish.com ads for like inflatable dick tents, the New York Times would keep it. But they're not. And the reason they're not, it surely comes down to revenue. And that opens up a bigger question too. And we want to talk about other stuff like Task and Purpose and some other veteran things, like you said, War on the Rocks' Bombshell blog or podcast. That, we're in an environment in which media stuff sucks is awful. However, somehow, there are people who are doing well. It's just a different model is emerging, and it doesn't really lend itself to the kind of big budget stuff that you need to be able to do, Times style reporting or local journalism equivalents of that level of in-depth reporting.
Yeah, we are. I think media wise, that's the biggest thing that we're losing out on, because you and I can bullshit into a microphone all day long,
but we're bullshitting.
In fact,
we do. We that's it's great. We are able to survive and able to have this be our income, and like, this is my only job. This is your part-time thing as aside from your civilian job. But like, if we were doing investigative journalism, it would be a lot harder to put out as much content as we do with just two people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I doubt we would be able, unless we were like really knocking it out of the park, reporting on like local sleaze in St. Louis, and people really liked it. I don't know how we'd be able to get subscriptions. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how we'd be able to make enough money. Like, if we would be lucky to be making like $1,000 a month between the two of us.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people out there who are trying to do that, who are trying to do a model like that. Jasper Craven does a lot of VA reporting, military reporting on his own, and he's got a Substack, and we've had Jasper on a couple of times to talk about the VA. But yeah, the things that he writes about are very in depth, and they require a lot of effort. It's not like me, writing for Task and Purpose, and like top 6 guns that are fun to shoot.
Yeah,
and then
me making fun of what's his name, Mike Flynn, and I hold myself to this. I will always be fucking smug that, God bless our former producer Carl, said, Nate, I don't know if it's a wise thing to say that Mike Flynn is a dumbass. Like, he was a general officer, and also like Task and Purpose has had him write pieces for them before. And I was like, no, that guy's a dumbass. I was proven right. I was right. I'm gonna just walk around, just gonna be stomping around the house here, being like, I was right. Y'all can respect that now. But
you should always just assume every general officer is kind of a dumbass. Because
yeah,
you have to be very smart and very stupid to become a general. Like if you're a very smart person, you become a major and you're like, holy shit, I need to get out of here. Otherwise, you
or
lean into
you'd be
it.
a captain. You'd say, holy shit, this is the worst decision I ever made, which is me.
Right. I give it to the captains. The captain is the last of the junior grade officer, and I know many captains who have just been like, I guess I'll stick around and I'll see what this is all about. And some of them become majors and they're like, this is great and I want more of it. And then there's the ones who are like, holy shit, everything has changed and sucks now and I don't want any part of it. And I get that. I understand that. That was me. That was me when they were trying to hand me my second rocker. I'm just like, ooh, no, I see what you guys do to Sergeant First classes. No. Don't want that.
Oh man! But then you cheated all the fans of Big Sarge Horton content.
Staff Sarge Horton is perfectly fine. My content now is belligerent and numerous. So
one of my good friends is still in and is a major, and knowing him, he's probably gonna pin lieutenant colonel before too long. And we had a conversation one time, and it was hilarious to me because he was talking about a hypothetical thing in the military, or like a decision, or like a thing, when someone is put in a bad situation. He's like, well, you're in this situation, and then all of a sudden you got, young Captain Bethay is out here having to try to make sense of it. And I was just like, dude, we're the same age. Like, I know I got it as a captain, but we're the same age. Like, and it was weird to me because I understand he wasn't insulting me, but it was more that, like, figuratively speaking, he now looks at captains as like these young kids who got to figure it out. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? You know what I mean?
I did figure it out. I got the fuck out of the army.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, yeah, this sucks. I want to podcast for a living.
When it comes down to media for us, for the military, for veterans in general, a lot of it's going away. But we also, like, I don't know, it feels like post-surge, like, was really when it opened up for people to move away or to have spaces that aren't like, writing. Say I want to write for the New York Times, that is, for me, even, who does have bylines in places and who does have a media presence of some kind, that just seems like an insurmountable, like, place for me.
Well, yeah, and I would also say too, Francis, that, like, think about this for a second. That, I mean, I wrote for the Times a bunch of times, and I make more money. I mean, like, speaking frankly about this, I make more money per month from our Patreon in 1 month than I have ever made in all of the freelance journalism I ever did. And we don't make that much money. I mean, we're Baruch Hashem, we do very well, and I'm very grateful for it. But, if this was the only thing I had making income, I would be below the poverty line. So that being said, not only is it insurmountable to write for these things, but also it doesn't pay at all. And, like, unless you go to certified Ivy League genius smart school after you get out of the military, you're probably not going to get a job at the New York Times. Like, it's just not going to happen. Not without a lot of patronage. And in that regard, you find yourself, kind of daunted in the sense that who are you going to write for? What are you going to write for? What's going to have the reach and audience? I mean, I brought up Task and Purpose. I brought up pat myself on the back story about Mike Flynn, but also, like, I wrote about Mike Flynn. I wrote about, generals in politics for Task and Purpose. I did my first podcast ever. The thing that got me to try podcasting was the Task and Purpose radio podcast, to, like, be a companion for Serial. So, they played a role in us getting to where we are. You wrote your piece about the fucking Your Everyday Care that had, like, your Gaston phone case that made that dude go mad and just write you that Marine Todd email. And they got bought out. They're not going away, but I think their content sort of perspective is shifting. And I think that
which is totally understandable. Like, I'm not here to dog Task and Purpose. So for all my Task and Purpose editors who end up watching or end up listening to this, certainly not dogging it. Things are changing and things are shifting away, and there is a diminishing audience of veterans, or at least it's not getting bigger, or people are walking away from it. Like, if it wasn't for this podcast, Nate, I wouldn't talk about the fucking military ever. Like, it's not that big of a part of my life anymore, and it hasn't been since 2015, I think. Like maybe when I went to Japan and a couple years ago, but after that, it really hasn't been that much of a force on my life. So you have a lot of people who are growing up and aging out of being mad about the war, or being mad about the army, or just being mad in general. We're all growing up. I'm late 30s. I'm officially in my late 30s. I don't have the time or the energy. I have a wife and a kid and a dog and a job, and we've got all kinds of these other distractions that are happening. So there certainly is kind of a diminishing return on some of these things. And we dedicated an entire episode to making fun of grunt style, but like, I'm not angry at grunt style. I don't have time to be angry at grunt style. They're just like some dumbasses that make racism t-shirts. But even them, like, they're sinking because of their own stupidity, but them getting bought out is also kind of a like, look, you got bought out, and either this company is going to figure out a way to make you profitable again, or they're going to liquidate everything. And if they had come in like 2014 and done that and been like, stop, spending money on dumb shit, maybe grunt style could have a place to sit. And I don't think racist t-shirt companies and racist coffee companies are going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But I don't think you're going to see any new ones crop up, because that's the thing that drives those things, the things that drives your Blackwater or your Blackwater coffee, Black Rifle coffee.
That's coming too, like contractor coffee, because it's not enough to be a troop. You also got to get paid. Like, it's
a bag of coffee that fits perfectly into the cargo pockets of some 511s.
511s, yeah, hell yeah, man.
Well, so we've got a lot of things that are just like that were important and quote necessary. It's all. I feel like a lot of these things was a part of our collective veteran therapy of some kind, where we all like found something to grab onto and scream as loud as we could for about 6 years. And now we're just like, okay, all the new kids, all the new soldiers, like on TikTok, they're all young and they're fresh faced and they don't look sad and beaten down and broken. They're complaining about the things that you should complain about as a private. The chow hall sucks. I don't get enough sleep. My sergeant's mean and a dick, and the people around me are all dumb and I'm smart. The things that every fucking E3 and E4 complains about, and is what's being complained about now. And you don't have people going like, yeah, I got shot at a bunch and I, can't deal with fireworks, and my mind is a huge mess because I got hit by an IED, or my buddy got hit by an IED, or just any number of different things. Those things don't happen anymore, and there's just, I don't know, it feels like there's not a space for us anymore, but also that's probably a good thing, that maybe we should finally be shutting the fuck up and moving the fuck on. And I mean, not this podcast obviously, but everybody else, it seems like that's kind of what's going on, because there's not much more to say anymore, or at least whatever they feel needed to be said has been said.
Well, yeah, but also it's like it's a matter of, there's not much to say anymore, and also there's fewer people who are willing to listen. And I also think that there has been a bit of a culture shift in America. I think fundamentally we really have to pay attention to the troops sort of mentality was, to me at least, spawned out of a collective sort of guilt and helplessness on the part of most Americans. Some of that was right-wing, bad faith, disingenuous bullshit. Let's not kid ourselves. But also, a lot of it was Americans feeling like they had no power. Like they had no, like they felt bad about the war. They felt bad the war was happening. They felt, but they might have opposed the war, but they also felt bad that young kids from America were going and fighting. Those kinds of things. And I think that, put it into perspective. So I'm 36, right? And I was thinking about, like, my dad is 31 years older than me. So when my dad was my age, it was 1989, almost 1990. Now think about how much, think about where the sort of boomer generation was situated in terms of like being young versus not being young, sort of where they were in like their careers, family, et cetera, where they were economically versus where they are now. Think about that huge perspective shift. You know what I mean? Like what's taken place since then. You know, my grandfather died earlier this year. He was 89 years old. So that seems so incredibly old to me. But then I'm like, well, when my dad was my age, his dad was 59. You know what I mean? Like, okay, time passes. It's just a platitude. But like, there has been such a massive shift since then, right? Since 1990, which was 30 years ago. Well, September 11th was 19 years ago. You know, next year's 20 years. Like, it's gone. It's been so long since it happened that I think so much of like what our kind of collective outpouring of perspective and I don't know, opinion and the stuff we were mad about, the stuff we cared about, the stuff we connected with, all of that was formed, I think, by our experiences being, you know, troops who joined or were in uniform after 9/11 and after the war started. And so we're at a point now where like the sort of median person, bringing it back to like I said, my dad was 36, you know, in 1989. The median sort of person of adult age, of adult sort of like, you know, like working age, et cetera, is probably closer to my age, you know, at this point. And that person would have been in high school or maybe college when 9/11 happened. So like those people that would have cared, the people that would have been politicized, who would have been paying attention, like a lot of them are way older, and the sort of what society is oriented around, i.e. selling shit to people who are of working age. Well, a lot of that now includes people who were way too young to have any kind of like adult perspective on 9/11. I mean, like my cousin, I told the story on the podcast before, my cousin, he went out and celebrated when bin Laden died. And I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know, I was, you know, salty combat veteran at that point. And he was like, you don't get it, man. Like you were almost 18 when that happened. Like when that happened, like I was a kid, bin Laden was like the boogeyman. He was like hiding under your bed. Like it was like, you know, this was like killing a comic book villain when he died. Like it was such a different moment for people my age. And you know, he's only 7 years younger than me. So I think about that a lot. Like the perspectives have changed so much that so many more people of working age, so many more people sort of in the kind of people in the demographic that advertisers and influencers and media entities care about, many of them are too young to have really been kind of wrapped up in that sort of collective guilt and powerlessness when the war started. And also, when you think about it, so few Americans are actually veterans that like it really is just kind of I hate to say it, kind of like a passing fad. I mean, it sucks, but it is. And like you said, I wouldn't be talking about any of this stuff anymore if it weren't for this show. I mean, I'm glad we do it. I want to keep doing it, obviously. But if it weren't for this show, man, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't talk about it elsewhere. Like,
we're not chic anymore, man. Like now it's all about Blue Lives Matter. Like nobody cares about the troops. We're not. I'm true.
That is true,
I'm
man.
Fucking serious.
No, I mean, the QAnon shit deciding that fucking McHooya didn't actually kill bin Laden, like that shit made me laugh so much because I guarantee, like it really is that like for the reactionary shithead sort of tendency in America, the troops are too lib now. You have to only support the cops.
Well, no, because the troops, And this is the first time that the wind was ever taken out of my sails is when one time I played my troop trap card on Twitter, like, you know, as you do, excuse me, I'm a veteran, so I think I know what I'm talking about. And then like getting someone with a bio full of QAnon shit, just being like, oh, so you're just a pawn for U.S. imperialism? Congratulations, you're fucking stupid. I'm like, damn, are you a tanky? What the fuck, man? Like, you're supposed to respect me and be like surprised and proud of me for doing this. And you know, it's just really kind of just like, oh, I can't. That doesn't work anymore. Like, it really kind of it took the wind out of my sails a little bit. And you know, that really is the shift that is coming. If I'd have been like, excuse me, I'm a cop and I like to bust in the heads of people with purple hair who want rights for other people, they would have loved me. They'd have been all about it. But now people are flying Blue Lives Matter flags and they're not necessarily flapping gigantic American flags while the National Guard pays the NFL to put their troops out there.
I'll pull the audio from it for the show. Did you see that thing about Troy Aikman.
Yeah, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman.
That's a lot of jet fuel just to do a little flyover.
That's your hard-earned money and your tax dollars at work.
That stuff ain't happening with Kamala Biden ticket. I'll tell you that right now, partner.
And it's fantastic, too.
What are they saying that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden won't be doing? Of course they'll be fucking doing that.
Of course they will. Are you fucking high?
The Democrats love that shit so much. Of course they'll do that.
The Democrats will trip over their own dicks to love the troops harder than the Republicans, and then the troops will still not vote for Democrats. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, it really, it doesn't. And yeah, those flyovers. Okay, first off, those flyovers, like, I know, I get it. A lot of people go, what a waste of blah, blah, blah. Those people are flying regardless. Pilots have to get flight time in one way or another. If they fly over your stadium versus flying over a big patch of nothing. Like, we had bomber flyovers, I think it was, the bombers are going to fly over to support the healthcare workers, right? And this was a couple years ago, or excuse me, a couple months ago. And so, Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, out on the other side of Missouri, is the place where the nuke bombers are. So they're like, let's get a bomber and we'll just fly it around and we'll just say, hey, look, there's a bomber up there. Who doesn't love to be like, oh, a thing that can, destroy a city block is here to say thank you. To me, sorry, a city block, a city itself, because they are nuke droppers, and so they're going to be flying regardless. If they fly over a stadium, it doesn't matter. But also, it's like this weird jingoist thing, and it is like having even announcers be like, oh, geez, we got to do this again, huh? Okay, fine, go ahead, do the flyover.
That does kind of feel like a watershed moment, doesn't it?
It does. And I know that a lot of people are like pissed off, but a lot of people are just so fucking tired. They're tired of talking about the troops. And I get it. I'm tired of it too. Like, not what we do, but I'm tired of it being the thing that, don't kneel because of the troops. Don't do this because of the troops. You got to do this because of the troops. That's tiresome. And you and I have always railed against that. How, fuck the troops. It doesn't matter. Do whatever the fuck you want. Like, kneel, stand, I don't give a shit, and neither do most troops. Like, most normal troops don't give a fuck what you're doing. I don't give a fuck if you're respecting me or not. So it is a thing where this hot mic, thing gets caught, and you see a lot of people just kind of like nodding their head in agreement. Like, why are we still doing this? Why are, for everybody who says, let sports be sports, that's fine. Why do you guys cram all the politics into it? Like, you don't have to play the national anthem before a sport. You don't have to have the fucking players out there. You don't have to do the flyovers. You don't have to do the big American flag wavy thing. You don't have to do those things. They're completely unnecessary. And it's all propaganda anyway. Like, it's all literal propaganda. Hey, go join the National Guard. And I really wonder how recruiters are going to kind of do it going forward, because if these things get taken away, if more schools kind of start saying, hey, we don't want recruiters here, where the military starts getting kicked out of all these places, do we go back to those like Clinton year troop levels where they're just like, we don't really need soldiers anymore, so away?
I think that with the economy being in the shitter, you're definitely going to see upsurges in recruitment regardless of presence. If they want to scale that shit down, but
it's not, though. There's recruiting and retention are down. They have been down. They've always been down for the last couple of years. It can't, even in a down economy, like, people are finding a way to make a buck. There's always a way to, whether it's gig stuff, like, people don't want to, it's easier for somebody to say, like, I'm just going to drive for Uber for a while, or I'm going to do, like, if they have the resources to pick up a small part-time job, they will do that before they'll say, let me make a 4-year commitment to go get my dick shot off in Afghanistan. Like, regardless of whether or not people are paying attention to the war, they still know one is happening, and they don't want any part of it. And, like, it's hard to convince, like, walk up to your average 18-year-old and be like, hey, that war that's been going on literally your entire life? Would you like to go be a part of that? Fuck no. Like, you got to really indoctrinate a kid through their teen years to want to do that, whether it be, because dad was in the military or brother was in the military, Lord knows that's why I joined, or some other kind of outside influence. Like that's just not going to be a thing that comes to them naturally as a career option. So it's all that shit's going to be down regardless. And I mean, good, because fuck war and fuck the army. Don't join it if you don't have to. But I don't know. It's just it's weird to watch things winding down and in one hand kind of think that like it's bad that this is happening. It's bad that these spaces are going away. But then again, at the same time, do we really need those spaces anymore? Do we need to keep fucking talking about this war? Can we just be done with it and move on with it and deal with our collective fucked upness? Because I mean, look, we got other issues. Sexual harassment, obviously, and sexual assault are obviously still big problems. The Marines just like fucking ejected a 2-star general for saying the N-word during PT because he did one of the. Did you see that?
No. Oh my god.
If you guys didn't catch it, yeah. So like during PT, like apparently they would play music, and sometimes they would have rap or hip hop that would use the N-word, and he'd just be like, "What if I said that word? Wouldn't it be would it be cool? Would you guys be okay with that?" And everybody's just like, What are you doing, man?" And so he would just like drop the N-word during PT, and everybody's like, nobody liked that. Nobody, as it turned out, and that wasn't an experiment we had to have. Also, we didn't have to do that. So the military's got its own shit to wade through at the moment, which is good. It needs to wade through it. The military really, we need our Russia in 1917 kind of moment just for the military, where it's just like, I understand there's a world war going on. We got to go deal with our own shit for a little bit, though. We got to unfuck some stuff over here first. And hopefully, I'm not saying go and execute the Romanov children. What I am saying is we need to have a struggle session within our own ranks about what the fuck we need to do to not make the military as terrible and toxic of a place. So the focus that the military has is shifting, and that's good. It's focusing more internally than it is focusing anywhere else. So thumbs up for that. But I don't know, like are we gonna get left by the wayside, or are we just gonna find our own places? Like, no, I'm not gonna go to the fucking VA. I did that once, never again. Nor do most soldiers that I know. Of our age, think that the VA or the American Legion is the best place to go, because those places suck, especially if you're a progressive. Like,
no, Francis, not the VA, the VFA.
The VFW.
VFW.
There we go. Yeah. The VA is good. Sorry, I'm getting my fucking acronyms all fucked up.
I can just cut this. You want to just take that again?
Yeah. So I mean, what do you have? You have the VFW or the American Legion, like two things that are not friendly towards any kind of progressive politics. It's generally full of old crotchety old men who can't leave the war behind. Like I want to. The military is always going to be a part of us. The war is always going to be a part of us. I also don't feel a need to sit around with a bunch of other soldiers and smoke cigarettes and drink beer and talk about the war. Fucking in 2012, I would have done that, but it's 2020 now. They're winding down. It's not, it's just not there. So maybe we'll have to find our own spaces and our own places to talk about these things. And I'm sure that those things will exist, much like they do for people from World War II or people from the Vietnam era. But, even though, like, the Ben Shapiro's of the world will trot out pictures of D-Day and just be like, this is what men are like, not like, sissy boys drinking soy and dyeing your hair today, for World War II, but nobody really talks about it. Nobody discusses it in a mainstream kind of sense. People talk, obviously, every middle-aged white dude loves to talk about World War II. But for the most part, like the politics and everything around it don't really get discussed on a day-to-day basis because it happened 70, 80 years ago. So we're in that period now, I guess, where the war is declining and our voices are declining for their own reasons. And that's good. Like it's good that it's good that we still don't have 250,000 troops stuffed into Iraq and Afghanistan and coming back fucked up, and coming back and needing an outlet for these things. It's great. I'm glad. And I want there to be places if those people are coming back though. and maybe they exist, and maybe we need to create it. Maybe that's what we have right here. If you ever want to write something, or if you ever want to I don't know, if you need if you need a story to tell, like, we can do that. We can absolutely. I don't know. It's as I said, we got to discuss what you and I do going forward too. Where are we going to be in 10 years? Certainly, I don't want to stop doing this because I think it's an important part of what it's an important part of my therapy, certainly, but also it's an important part of the therapy of a lot of people who had to go through the same shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, that ultimately it's an opportunity to talk through stuff and to hear different perspectives and to kind of think through why you think what you do. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why we like the gardening content so much. It's because, quite frankly, I mean, for one, you run out of shit to talk about, damn, those MREs sucked back then, didn't they? And for another, it's just more like, at a certain point, you just kind of stop caring. It stops being relevant. I mean, in April, I'll have been out of the military longer than I was in. And even now, sometimes I think, did I really do that? Like, it just seems so like, did I really stand in formation that much and get yelled at that much? Like, it's getting hazier and hazier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you start to forget about a lot of that stuff. And, I turned in gear yesterday. All my Army stuff, all my CIF shit is going back, and it is that kind of there is that bittersweet moment, but also it's been so long since I've done anything really Army. Like, I guess I did an annual training in Kansas last year, but that was also when I was incredibly sick. Like, I got the stomach flu really bad, and I had to be hospitalized in Fort Riley. So, I don't really remember too much of that, or at least I didn't have as great a time as everybody else. But I wasn't doing that much Army stuff. Like, my last deployment, I'm getting my my Facebook memories are all the pictures of us getting ready to step up, because we flew to Iraq on November 1st in 2009, and I got back in September 2010. So there's just a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot not going on anymore. And yeah, I mean, my garden is something that I affect on a daily basis, and the war is just this thing that we did, and that it's important to talk about, but also it's not the most important thing happening in my life anymore. But even under a Biden presidency, I get my tinfoil hat theory was just like, oh well, Biden's going to win, and all these places don't want to talk about the wars anymore because it's going to be Biden. But it's not. It's just not happening anymore. Like, even the breathless things that the breathless reporting of Trump dropped a Moab, or Trump bombed the Syrian base. Like, those are things that are so like routine. That were so routine before Trump. And now we really want to talk about it. We really want to talk about the war. And then that dropped off. Like, right after 2017, nobody gave a fuck anymore. Because again, the war just wasn't a big thing. There wasn't a lot happening. There was some Taliban peace talks. Like, everybody loves peace talks, and that, like, oh, that's nice. And then they move on and hope that the peace talks happen. And if they don't, then we're all back to, writing about how we're all getting blown up again, or something. So, I don't know, man. It's fucked up, and it's weird, but it's just weird to live through, to be in this transitional period. And it's good and it's bad. It's only bad if we allow it to be bad, though. It's only bad if we decide, well, fuck it, we're just not going to talk about it anymore, because the next time a extended conflict against guerrilla warfare crops up, we're there to say, hey, we did this. It was a bad idea. You can't win that war. You've never won a war against a guerrilla fighters ever. So please stop trying to do it. I don't know. Maybe we can affect something, or maybe there'll just be another crop of veterans that are hitting up the Discord in 15 or 20 years and saying, man, that war fucking sucked. And you and me will be in our 50s, like, yeah, told you so.
Sucked pretty bad.
Told you not to fucking join. If only we had 25 years of podcast content saying don't join the Army.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
go back to the first episodes, man.
I was there. I've been where you're going. So I'm rattling my fucking canteen cup on the subway, except that's Patreon now. Francis, you did a bonus interview, so you want to introduce that?
Yeah, I talked to a Marine veteran, Rico. Rico has a Twitch stream and everything. He is a very politically motivated, progressive veteran. And we discussed the poverty draft, what the poverty draft means. And, if you just a quick, that's, the when the economy goes into the shitter, what can the poor 18-year-olds do other than join the military and go get shot at? So we talk about that, but we discuss a lot of the opportunities that the military offers you and how that's really fucked up. So please enjoy. Who doesn't love to spend $1,000 out of pocket once per month at the idea of going to a doctor?
People love this shit. Okay, like we same with the pathology is with regards to unemployment benefits is like we should get rid of it because it's making people lazy and not want to go back to work. It's they believe in a whole host of bullshit. Like they're inoculated from what the rest of the country actually thinks and feels, even amongst conservatives. Like the people in Washington are like uniquely inoculated from the rest of us. And that's why there's just this huge fucking divide between the policies that, again, even amongst Republican voters and whatnot support. It's just there's a huge divide between that and what the establishment of both parties in Washington think people actually want.
Now, Rico, your tweets were sent to me because you had a big thread on the poverty draft, and we kind of touched on that a little bit in the beginning when you were talking about the Marine recruiter offering you everything that you wanted. But I've written about the poverty draft, the idea of the poverty draft before. But can you kind of give us an idea of what that is before we jump into that?
Yeah. Okay. In short, basically, it's for a lot of people, the military is their own was their only means of upward economic mobility, and not just upward economic mobility, but financial and job security. And that because the reason I bring that up is like for people who like say we want less people in the military, we don't want people to join the military, we don't want people to become a part of the empire and all that. And I'm like, I understand that one, but like the whole reason I made that thread and pointed it out was that there are a lot of factors that material factors that play into the reason why people join in the first place and why people stay in. I'm sure you've met plenty of people like that, but I know way too many people who said they were going to get out but stayed in because the second they actually had to see the way things are in the civilian sector about how really fucking on your own you are, well, people panic. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. We had a guy about 5 years ago come off of active duty and join my reserve unit, and he fucking hated it. He was just like, I work at a call center. He was like, a staff sergeant in the Army when he got out, and he's like, I'm nobody. Like, I don't have any pull anywhere. Everybody just treats me like a piece of shit. I hate it. I was like, yeah, that's the private sector, man. You're treated like a piece of shit at the very beginning, no matter how much like experience or whatever else you did. You're working a call center. You're working a bitch job, man. That's all it is.
Basically,
he joined. He went right back to the active duty too. After a couple of years, he was just like, fucking can't deal with it. And that is the biggest welfare queens in America. Really are the
military. The truth is,
especially the troops who like continue to join on because they're just like, you have your ones that get out and they can go join the private sector because they have the connections, they know people, or they have the background, job skills. You join the Marines doing something that has application on the outside, but if you join the Marines as a grunt, you're not coming out with anything useful.
Nothing.
After all that. So what do? You fucking stay in, or you go to another MOS maybe once your knees start to hurt a lot and your back hurts a lot from carrying all that shit. So you go do something else. But like you stay in that bubble because, to be honest, being outside of it is frightening and
terrifying.
It is. It's I remember that after just being deployed, coming home and being like, what the fuck do I do? Like, at least overseas, I knew what I was doing. Maybe I didn't like it, but every day I woke up and I had, I'm a creature of routine. So that's where that the military really fucking filled it out for me. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of material need, and I would love for every public grade school or public school to teach the Communist Manifesto in junior high, but we're not going to make Marxist Leninists out of everybody at the age of 16. So
No.
like you, like me, you join because you're just like, well, why not? It's the military. It sounds, it's got everything that I need. It's giving me everything that I could ever want.
And that's what going on that thread as well. I said this too. I'm just like, look, if I could, because right now I work for a aviation maintenance defense contractor, and I was able to get the job because of my experience in the military. But again, I didn't get this job immediately. When I got out the first time, it was shit fucking sucked. But I'll save that for another part of the story. But my point of my still hovering around the military in some way, shape, or form with regards to meeting my material needs. I said in that thread as well, like, if I could completely separate, meet my needs in the same way while separating, and I mean completely separating from the military in any capacity, like no defense contractors, no nothing. If I could do that, I absolutely fucking would. But it's really hard to do that, and I've tried finding jobs completely separate from the military and all that, and it's really fucking hard to find them.
There's not a lot of helicopters that need maintaining that aren't used for by the cops or by the military.
Like everything that I've done for the last 8 years of my life is revolved around the military. So all my job experience, everything. So the civilian equivalents to them, all for by and large, involve the military still.
Yeah, and that's now I get a little like I don't like necessarily the term poverty draft, but you're really nailing like what the idea behind it is that like
we can reframe the term, but that's the idea.
Right. It's the idea is perfect is absolutely there, and it is like if we had free college, if we had free healthcare, why would people join the army?
Exactly.
There would be, or if people's, like you said, if people's material needs were taken care of, the military definitely. Like I was born, middle class, probably upper middle class. I went to Catholic high school. I was born privileged, and I lived a privileged life, and I joined the military because I felt like, well, that's just what you have to do. But also at the age of 17, I was completely adrift in the world because there was also just nothing mentally that brings you to where you need to be. Right, there's nothing there, and I think that's like the military. It's not just preying on, and certainly I'm not trying to say one is better than the other or anything, but the military not only preys on people who are adrift financially, but adrift just mentally and socially. Yeah. And it's kind of a, hey, come on, we've got a family over here for you. We've got this thing, but
and
also.
I definitely want to touch on that. Keep going. I definitely want to touch on that part.
Well, I just wanted to say, I also have been surrounded by the military my entire life. My brother joined when I was a baby. My father was in. My grandfather was in World War II. All the males in my family joined at some capacity, and you have that just like, well, I think I'm supposed to do this. I think that like everybody else did it, so I'm supposed to do it too, right? And because I'm doing the thing for my country. And like it turns out even my dad was just like, fuck no, man. My father, it turns out, was a secret democratic socialist and never told me. And he was just like, no, the military's terrible. You shouldn't have joined it. But he's like, but also, I mean, your grades weren't really there, and what the fuck else were you gonna do?
Exactly. Like, well, I was not a star student at all, and I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do in my life back then. You know what I mean? I had you could have convinced me to join damn near anything back then. Like, come on, if I'm being real with you.
Like, if there was a better idea, if somebody had like said, "Hey, Rico, instead of the Marines, what about the Merchant Marines? You want to go hang out on a boat over here instead?" Or just
I would have absolutely signed up for that.
And for me, as somebody who had to shell out $350 to a plumber today, like fucking, I am 100% on like, I wish somebody would have like been like, what about instead of wasting your time at a 4-year college, which had I gone, and when I did do community college, I mean, I had fun, but it was certainly academically a waste on me at the time.
Yeah.
If somebody had been like, you can go over here and become a union electrician or become a plumber or become like any of the, a welder, because guess what? You can learn how to do that stuff in like a year or two, and then you will literally always have a job.
Man, ain't nobody tell me none of that shit back then. You know what I mean?
And that's what I wish. Like, if I could go and redo public schools, like your entire senior year, or at least half of your senior year, is just going to be prepping you for the outside world and being like, look, you don't have to go and get a fucking communications degree at Mizzou. You can just go become a fucking plumber, or just take a year off. Go work as a dishwasher. Go work as a dishwasher and live in a shitty apartment with 3 other people, man. It'll be great.
Or work as a Domino's delivery driver and living in a shitty apartment with 3 other people. That was after getting out the first time.
Absolutely, man. Everybody should have that experience, working the shitty job and living in the shitty apartment with like 3 shitty people.
It definitely gives you some perspective, that's for sure.
All right, everybody. As always, you can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. Check out writings and merchandise at hellofawaytodie.com. And as always, please, whatever support, whether it be monetarily, whether it be telling your friends, whether it be just kind of getting us out there a little bit more. And, hey, feel free to, share your stories. Things are winding down, but that doesn't mean that the things that you have to talk about are any less important. So until next week, Nate, talk to you later.
Yep, take care.